And is plot never a problem for, well, I can't imagine never is the right word, but it does seem as though plot is not a big problem for you.
I've never had a problem with plot. For me, once you have interesting characters, the plot just happens. And sometimes it doesn't happen the way that you would think, and so I think it helps me kind of keep away from formulas, because the characters are doing things that I don't expect, and they don't kind of follow the path I would think. And I think with this series, a lot of the time it's going off in directions people don't expect, because there is a formula for a lot of different series, and mine doesn't have a beginning, middle, end, and then the next book kind of repeats beginning, middle, end. It's all part of one long thread. And with The Host, it was the same way. Once I mean, with Wanda and Melanie, there was so much there. There was a book just in their relationship. So it's not hard to come up with things to happen.
And do you imagine that you will ever do a book that isn't fantasy or science fiction?
I tried once. When I was working on Twilight, just kind of, I was exploring all kinds of different things. And I have several files of books that wouldn't be fantasy or science fiction or anything. But the one I was working on, one that was just chick lit. You know, I thought I had an idea and I thought it'd be kind of fun, and I got so bored with it. So I don't know if I can write something that's just entirely human. We'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind later. But right now, the ones I have kind of queued up, the next several to go are all fantasy.
Are they? Now, does Host have a rivet on the cover? Because that's how I can tell the difference between a fantasy and a science fiction. If it has like a rivet, you know, or a mechanical thing like a screw on the cover,
no,
then
the cover
it's science fiction.
I don't think the cover is entirely done, but right now the cover is like about this much of a woman's face with the silver in her eye. So it doesn't look science fiction at all.
You know, thinking of books, writing them in an arc.
Yes.
Which is the way your trilogy, your Twilight trilogy is an arc. I mean, it's one story, as you said.
Yes.
And in a way that's so, how do you know when to stop then?
That's the problem.
Yeah, right.
I mean, with book 4, I think that I'll be at a place where I can put the brakes on if I want to. It's just really hard to let go of your characters.
I was just going to say that. I can imagine for you
that's why the story continues, because after Twilight, it was, if I stopped writing about Bella and Edward, it was like killing them. And it'll get to the point after book 4, I don't think Bella would ever be a narrator again, because once you have the things resolved, sort of done. But there are so many other characters that I have come to care deeply about, and I may continue later, but I'll probably take a break and do some of the other projects that have been, you know, trying to get out.
So how are you getting all this writing in with all of your traveling?
I'm not getting as much done right now. I really need to buckle down and get book 4 finished. But it's an interesting balance. You know, there's things you need to do to promote the books, and then I like having a chance to kind of get out and see the faces of the people who are reading, because it means a lot to me. And there's something very special about having people believe in your characters the same way you do that makes them more real. And so I like that experience too.
Do you imagine that your writing will continue to go sort of switch between adult versus YA or teen books, or will you do you have plans for a book for younger kids or not? I
don't really have younger plans. I wasn't thinking YA when I wrote Twilight. I was just thinking entertain myself. And I find that age group, you know, 17, you're right at the point where you feel so grown up and so complete, and yet there's so many experiences you haven't had, and everything is so fresh and kind of potent at that point in time. But at the same time, you aren't completely free to make your own decisions, and there's just a lot to that dilemma that makes it a really interesting time period. So I'll imagine that I'll be back in YA, and then I'll have other things that happen in that age group. But I'm kind of right on the line with things that, issues that generally are more interesting to people in their 20s or 30s.
I think you should do that chick lit book. I think you would do a great job. I mean, you have such a wonderful sense of humor.
It had such a slow start, but if I could have pushed through that, you know, I thought it was a funny idea, so we'll see. Maybe someday I'll finish it.
Do you write it all while you're traveling, while you're on the road?
Sometimes, but it depends on how much sleep I'm getting. I am addicted to sleep. That is my weakness, and so if I'm not getting 8 hours, I'm not a happy person, and I can't really get anything done. So that's kind of the trouble on the road.
So for all those writers who are watching this, do you have like different paper files as well as computer files of those books? Or
not really. Sometimes I'll have a notebook by my bed just because I don't like
a dream might come with another Edward.
Well, a lot of times I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a good idea. Also, the shower is a good place for that. So I like to have pen and paper around to write things down. When I'm really into writing, things come fast. But generally, I'm all in the computer. It's just so easy and convenient to have all your files there. Although I have gone through 2 computer crashes and switched to Mac because I'm tired of viruses. So there's dangers to that. Always back things up.
Right, right. And do you get a chance to read as much now?
No, and that was one of the sacrifices I didn't see coming. I do not get to read nearly as much. That's one of the nice things about being on the road is I read on planes. And another nice thing is that my bookseller friends give me lots of great galleys. So I get to read things early and they kind of steer me towards the things that are really exciting and good. But when I'm at home, no, and I haven't really followed anything on TV for a really long time. I don't ever turn it on anymore because there's nothing, I don't know what's going on. So there's a lot of anything outside the writing and my family I don't have time for anymore.
Are there books that you find yourself, though, going back to?
Yes.
So what are
I read Pride and Prejudice at least once a year, and then usually one other, like Mansfield Park, I think will be this year. And then there's a writer called Eva Ibbotson, and most of her stuff I think is out of print. But I love her little sweet, I mean, she just writes true love. So
there's one she wrote that's set in a hat shop in Austria.
Medensky Square.
Yes,
I
Medensky,
love that one.
Me too.
And it describes all the dresses, and I'm very into fashion, so when she's talking about all the different styles, that one is so sweet. I love her books, and so I do read hers quite often.
And she has a whole series of books for like 10-year-olds.
You know, and I haven't read the younger ones yet because I was just discovering her as I started writing, and so then I kind of had to stop.
You might like those. I mean, they're very different fantasies from what you're writing, but they're fantasies.
Well, I love her style. I love the way she sees things.
Yeah, Medensky Square, gosh. I know.
Such a good one to reread. You can read that one over and over and it's still fun.
It is. Now, what about those other books like that your parents read? You know, those early influences. Anne McCaffrey or...
I love Anne McCaffrey. I still read. I haven't kept up with her most recent things, but I reread Dragonflight all the time. And her Dragon Singer series, which is one of my favorites. And Terry Brooks I still get back to sometimes. You know, they're friends. When you've read books as a child that influenced you a lot, you have to go visit them now and then.
And I think that the fact that your parents introduced you to them and shared their pleasure with you, I mean, even if it's just by having the books there, but not just your father reading the Terry Brooks to you, is a really powerful kind of sort of suggestive device, you know, to kind of implant those books in a funny way in you.
Yeah, well, you know, that bookshelf that they had was my library for so long. And there is something about seeing your dad, who you know is a very, very busy person, and you know how much his time counts. And when you see him unable to rip himself away from a book, it impacts you. We still read together. I still give my mom, I just passed on Dragonhaven, which is Rob McKinley's doing, because I loved it so much. And so whenever I find a good one, you know, they get it next. They're my next readers.
And I guess that's a great note to end on, because I think that the experience for so many teen and adult readers too, I think, of your books is that they just get engrossed in that world that you've created. And it's so wonderful that it began with a dream.
Well, it seems to have continued in the same vein. Everything has been very dreamlike all along, and it's exciting for me to have them sharing it with each other. And I have nothing better than hearing a mom and daughter say, we love reading these together.
Yes. Well, Stephenie Meyer, thank you so much for coming today to University Bookstore and talking to me on Booklist.
Thank you for having me. It's very fun.
Good.